I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be When Life Feels Hopeless. I've got an email here from a viewer, but before we get into it, I got a quote that I wrote down. And I say, everything you build during your life and everyone you love will eventually dissolve. Sometimes everything in your life will seemingly dissolve overnight. Your business may fail, your woman may leave you, a loved one may die, you may lose your job, etc. The key to recovering from any difficult time or period in your life is your ability to let go of what was and embrace what could be with enthusiasm. When someone or something dies or dissolves in your life, good or bad, it's a call to create something new and emotionally compelling. Why? Well, at some point you'll run out of time to be the person you were meant to be, and wouldn't you much rather be able to look back upon your life with contentment and peace instead of regretting what could have been or what you could have done? That's something to think about. So let's go ahead and get into this guy's email here, who's obviously going through a tough time. He said, "Hey Coach, I emailed you a few weeks ago about my long-term relationship with my high school girlfriend from over 30 years. As I mentioned before, I was needy and controlling before, but with your help, I've become less so and things had been going really well. A few days ago, she was at my house and needed to take a bath before we went to bed and asked that I charge her phone. When I plugged it in, I noticed a text from one of the guys that she's dated. Bet you weren't expecting that. That's always fun. He says, I had asked her to do something Friday night, but she refused, saying that she needed to be with her daughter before prom. I asked if she had a date. She replied that she didn't. Anyway, the text was to a guy making plans for a movie, and I really fucked up here. I texted him back, canceling. Of course, she found out and no longer wants anything to do with me. She lied and I invaded her privacy." So that should be like offsetting penalties in like football, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to look at the fact this girl lied to you. She's meeting another guy behind your back. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good a time that you've had with her or what's happened in the past. The point being is that you're with a woman who has no problem looking in you in the eye and lying to you. You got to look at that objectively and say, that's not a good thing. If you want to have a healthy, not just an intimate relationship, if you want to have a good friendship with somebody, I mean, you can't have a good friendship with people who are constantly fucking lying to you. I remember years ago when I was in real estate, last few years I was in there, I had a couple of guys that worked for me, and they both wanted to become partners in my business. And I was willing to do that under certain terms and conditions that needed to be met. And one of the guys just, when he got himself backed in a corner, he would tend to look me in the eye and lie to me. And I wanted to see that he could change his ways. And I gave him the opportunity to make a change, and he still continued to make the wrong decisions. And so for me, my mind was pretty easy to be made up because I just looked at what he did. And I thought, you know what, the last thing I want to do is get into business with a guy who has a problem telling the truth. So he says, she lied quite a bit and she's been deceptive many times, but I always forgave her. It's like, why, dude? That's just, you can't fix that. The only thing you can do with a woman that's like that is just accept her the way she is if you're okay with being with somebody who's going to constantly lie and be devious to you. I dated a woman like that years ago, and as awesome as the sex, God damn, this woman was a great lover. One of the best lovers I ever had in my life. I had so much, we always had a great time together. She was a lot of fun, but man, I'll tell you, it's like when you date a woman, you love a woman, it's like, God, you fucking think about her when you wake up every day. But when you take the fact that she's a devious liar like this woman is, it's just, first few years, it's like you look past it, but after a few years of it, you just get tired of it. You get tired of the bullshit, and because most of the time it's unnecessary. But it's just the way that they learn, and they can't help themselves. And this was something that she and her family, they often kept secrets from one another, and that didn't work for me. That didn't jive with me. And as awesome as this girl was, as much fun as she was, It just eventually it turned me off to the point where I fell out of love with her. Eventually you get tired. It grates on your nerves. He said, we've spent over 2 years together and the best 2 years of my life. We keep talking about, and at the time, this particular girl, she was the best relationship I'd ever had. I'm fucking so in love with this girl. But like I said, you can't fix that. You can't change that. People become better versions of themselves, but the core of who they are doesn't change. And that was so tough. It was so heartbreaking to end that relationship. And because not only did I lose a relationship with her, but I lost the relationship that I had with her daughter and her family, and it's just tough. So it's not only you breaking up with them, it's like you're breaking up with a whole family in essence. And like I said, it's not a lot of fun, and it's nice to be able to spot those things ahead of time. And it's like these are the kind of relationships that cause you to grow and become more and to become better and to become more discerning and also to be pickier. He says, we kept talking about being married and living happily ever after. Now I'm so distraught. Also, I just lost my job. I feel like my life is over. He says, a little more background. My son died 5.5 years ago. My wife left me 2.5 years ago. But 6 months later, you met this girl, and it was better than anything you've ever had. And what I realized is that as long as you keep plugging along and you keep working on yourself and trying to get better and to learn from your mistakes, especially this one, I mean, look at all the space that you've given this girl, all the chances you've given her, and she just continues to be a liar and to be devious. I mean, like I said, you can't fix that. There's nothing you can do about that. But that's the type of thing you got to ask yourself, is this what I really want? Do you think, honestly, you can really have a great, healthy, long-term, effortless relationship with a woman who's a devious liar? It's not going to happen, dude. As much as you would want it to happen, it's not going to happen. He says, since he died, nothing has gone right in my life except my relationship with this woman, and now that's over. I've had a couple of failed businesses, and I don't think I'll ever recover. I went from a high-paying job, beautiful house, money in the bank, a pillar of the community, to living in a garage apartment with no money, no girlfriend, lonely and desperate. I want to die in my sleep, and I'm drinking way too much. Also, I had an injury a few years ago that prohibits me from running or doing any of the sports that I used to do to be so active in. I hate my life the way it is now. So, I mean, I can understand here's what I've learned in life, is that you go through periods in life. And I remember years ago, like when I was transitioning out of real estate and into the mortgage business, I mean, I literally went from making $500,000 a year to zero. Because like when you start a new business in a completely new field, I mean, basically you're living off of whatever you've got saved. You got to pay your normal bills. And in addition to that, when you start a new business, it's like everything that you do is an expense. So that's further whittling away at what your savings are or your working capital is. And it's a tough thing to go from living that kind of lifestyle and making a conscious choice to go and do something that's a completely new type of business where the advertising and the marketing I used to use in real estate and the mortgage and the construction business just simply doesn't apply in the type of business that I'm in now. And so to go from that and to have $1 million lakefront house, I mean, I liquidated everything, because when you go from making $500,000 a year to zero, you don't want to be spending $25,000, $30,000 a month in living expenses and mortgages and travel and all that stuff, because you'll eat up what you have saved away pretty quickly. And so I downsized, and like for me, the hard thing that I went through was that I figured, I'm a fucking smart guy. I'll figure this shit out. 1.5 2 years tops. It took me 4.5 years to figure out my business model, to figure out how it would continue to grow and become profitable. And I'll tell you what, that was one of the most difficult things I'd ever had gone through in my life, because for about 10 months, I also took a shitty part-time job at this crappy sports bar. I chose to go work a part-time bartending, or part-time job working the weekends, basically waiting tables, picking up a few extra shifts, so I wouldn't have to go work full-time for somebody else, because my business was making money, but it wasn't making enough to pay me and to continue to pay my web developers and experiment. And so I was basically working a shitty job on the weekends to earn enough money to pay my web developers and to continue to test pay-per-click campaigns as I was figuring out my business model. To go from making $500,000 a year to fucking waiting tables when you're in your late 30s, it's like, that fucking sucks ass, dude. And it's like, I know you said you've got some physical disabilities, but it's like, you got to do what you can. And the most important thing that any man or woman needs to have in their life is an emotionally compelling vision. You've got to have something that you're striving for, something that is emotionally compelling to you. And so I know you had your son died 5.5 years ago. I can't imagine what that's like. But I've lost a lot of close friends and a lot of close family members over the years, and it's shocking when those fucking things happen. And at the end of the day, that's just part of life. That's gonna happen. Everybody you love eventually is gonna pass away, and everything that you build in your life eventually will dissolve. Even if you build great buildings, at some point those buildings will be functionally obsolete, and they'll knock them down and build something else in their place. And so the key is you got to figure out what it is that you want to do in this next chapter of your life, because obviously your marriage has ended 2.5 years ago. Then 6 months later, you hooked up with this girl from high school, and you had a great time with her. It was a great run. You got to kind of live out your fantasy. But at the end of the day, if you're to look in the mirror and be totally honest with yourself, you can't possibly believe that this kind of a woman would be great to have a long-term marriage or long-term relationship with when she's constantly lying to you. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to get old. I know it got old for me. But like I said, what you've got to do is now you should look at this as an opportunity to create something new. And I've had this happen in life. I mean, I like when I was in my 20s, I had jobs that I was working. I thought, I'm going to work at this company the rest of my life. I'm going to eventually become a partner. I'm going to have equity in the company and all this. And like 1.5 years later, I couldn't wait to get the fuck out of it. I didn't even like getting up in the morning and going to that job. And so when those things would happen, when I would realize that, especially like when I was in my 20s, I hadn't gone through this kind of stuff enough, it was very disconcerting for me, because I wanted to just get to a place and be happy and stay that way. But what I realized, like, you go somewhere and you work a job and like you learn everything that you can learn there, and when that company no longer has an opportunity for you to grow and continue to improve your skills or add to your skills, you got to move on. And so the first couple times I did, it was very uncomfortable, but then I've just learned over the years that that's just part of life. And then, as I got in later years, when I started businesses and started having companies, and then you get business partners come and go in those companies, employees come and go, and things happen, market changes, you change, you go through different periods of your life where you don't have the same internal enthusiasm for what you used to do than you do now. And so the key is to ask yourself, great, I mean, you're starting over, right? You got a clean fucking slate. You can do whatever it is that you want with the rest of your life. And so the question is, what would you do? And whatever that happens to be, then you need to start moving in that direction, because you got to have something that's emotionally compelling. Because if you don't, then you're going to sit around and look at all of your problems. And yeah, we can always find reasons to feel shitty or feel bad about our lives. But at the end of the day, you can't do anything about the fact that your son has died. You can't do anything about the fact that your marriage ended 2.5 years ago. And you can't do anything about the fact that this high school sweetheart of yours that you always had a crush on is a lying, devious woman. It is what it is. You can't change those circumstances. The only thing you can change is what it means to you. And if I were you, I'd be looking at it saying, you know what? Because you recovered from your wife and you found someone who was even more fulfilling, even though she had her flaws and faults. But you know what? You can find somebody better. And that's what I've learned throughout my life, is that better always comes. And the way to obtain that better, to have more wins, there's always another victory to celebrate, is you got to keep grinding it out. You got to keep moving forward. Figure out what it is that you want to create in this next chapter of your life. And at the end of the day, you may find yourself 10 years from now in the same place, wanting to build something else and move in a different direction. So if you're at that place in life right now and you're trying to figure out what your purpose is or what you want to do in the next chapter of your life, go to my website, click the products tab at the top of your screen, and book a paid phone coaching session with yours truly. And I will talk to you soon.